Hello everyone, I'm Fozzie or Cam, and I'm here as always with my co-host Will. How are you doing today, Will?
I'm doing great, Cam. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic, and Stranger Things has ended, right? And I feel like we've talked about it quite a bit, but I mean, it's over. We need to review Stranger Things season 5, the final season of Stranger Things as a whole. We talked about the first part, I believe, but we haven't really talked about the second part or the finale, or the movie that was disguised as a finale. At it coming in at around 2 hours and 6 minutes, which is just ridiculous for a television show finale. Um, but yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. The reactions online are different than what I thought they'd be. And yeah, just a lot of surprises with this season. So I'm just gonna go from the top here and give a quick review from start to finish, and then we'll sort of start, and then Will give his quick review. Then we'll start to get into some detail, because definitely some details we want to cover here. Um, but first and foremost, for me, I just want to state that I like this season of Stranger Things. I really like this season of Stranger Things. I think it would have been even the worst episodes of Stranger Things aren't that bad because there's always just so much going on that it just kind of balances out at the end. So with this season, it really kind of surprised me how they kind of did this with it taking place with that big of a time jump in between season 4 and 5. I thought the ending of 4 made it look like it was this urgent thing, and it was a little weird that 5 started and it was there was less urgency, and they were just kind of sitting around looking for Vecna. But I think it's always kind of cool when they twist your expectations like that. But nonetheless, they still got right into action. It's not like there was any waiting around. And honestly, maybe it could have benefited a little bit from there being a little bit more, having a little bit more of a slow pace. I think part of the reason why the epilogue and the finale was so long is because we didn't have any scenes in this season where there were no stakes, no pressure, and they weren't in a rush because they didn't have to be at that point in the epilogue. They were living their lives. Um, so in that sense, I'm actually glad they made that an hour. But I also wish they were able to get more moments of characters just interacting in a non in different ways. I noticed a lot of the times there were always conversations kind of were all the same. I've seen people point this out, and it didn't really bother me, but it's just something I have to point out here. It's either going to be a plan. I feel like they a lot of the conversations revolve around planning, and they all take place while something else is happening, which kind of detracts from what they're even talking about when they keep getting interrupted by this and that, and starts to get a little annoying, especially when they all start to do that. But I also understand there was just so much stuff that they just have to fit in and break down and get to. Um, so again, it's not, I like it. It's not, that's not an issue for me. I think all the I think most of the performances this season were good. I've never been a Millie Bobby Brown fan. I don't think she's a great actress, and I don't think she was fantastic. She was okay. She was good. She was solid enough this season. Didn't blow me away at all. Where I feel like she could have maybe blown me away with some of the material she was given, especially in the finale. But I just wasn't totally blown away with her performance. That same thing goes for Noah Schnapp. I thought some of his lines. I always thought he was also kind of a weak actor. Um, I don't know. I just have a. It might be a personal thing. I've always just thought him and Millie were the weakest actors on the show for me, and Finn Wolfhard would go in and out in being in that category. Maybe that's a hot take. Maybe it's not, but that's what's always kind of resonated with me. But I don't know. He was definitely better than last season. I'll tell you that right now. Noah Schnapp was way better than last season. I mean, he wasn't given anything except for that one scene in the car in season four. So, yeah, I was definitely happy he had a bigger role this season, especially the role they gave him, which was really fascinating, giving him powers. Ended up being a critical plot point and ended up being one of the coolest things they did this season. So, despite him having a weaker performance, I was still happy to a point with what they did with with his character. Um, Especially in the second to last episode, I thought that was an amazing scene. Despite a weird amount of online criticism, which who knows why. Um, but I also really liked what they did with Max this season. I had no clue how they were going to integrate her into this. I assumed she wouldn't be awake when it started, and I thought that eventually, maybe towards the end, she'd just wake up and she'd be back. But no, she's kind of in it, sort of from the jump, but just in a completely different way than expected. With Holly Wheeler, who is sort of a new addition to the show, which is kind of weird to have that big of a new addition this late into a show, but it works. It really helps with establish Vecna as a really big presence, and I really like the Henry Creel scenes almost as much as the Vecna stuff. So it kind of just added a layer to Vecna and how scary he is and how threatening he can be. And I thought it also was great that it brought back Max's character. So I see people complain about Holly being such a big role, but the way I see it, without her, we wouldn't have gotten great stuff like Max coming back and the whole Henry Creel thing. And Derek Turnbow, who ended up being an amazing character. And I also thought this new actress who played Holly Wheeler did a good job as well. Yeah, so no issues there. I thought Gaten Matarazzo's Dustin was great. I thought Joe Keery was good. I was happy with Robin. I think Robin might be the MVP for this season. Perhaps maybe her, Hopper, maybe Jonathan. Um, yeah, I thought Robin was great. The heart and soul made a lot of things happen, especially with the radio show. So kind of really impressed with her performance there. And then let's see here. I don't know. An issue I had with the older folks, Steve Harrington and Dustin's relationship. I don't know. I think maybe they should have saved this bickering for last season. It feels weird to finally get to a point where they're almost like in Cobra Kai season six, Will, where you in season six you still had Johnny and Daniel arguing with each other, even though they'd been doing it the whole show, you know. And granted, they hadn't been doing it the whole show, but it just kind of felt weird to me to have that go on in the final season and only just at the end they become friends again. And I don't know, I think it's fine. I think the payoff is good, where Dustin kind of breaks down to Steve and talks about Eddie. So I thought that emotional scene that was really cool. Um, I don't know if I would have made that decision. I really liked Nancy and Jonathan this season. I can't believe they broke up. I think that was just I didn't see that coming. And Will, I'm gonna be honest with you. I did not immediately know they broke up. I was kind of
I was the same,
confused.
yeah.
I actually finished the episode, saw a headline. I was like, "What are they talking about?" I rewatched the scene. I was like, "Oh, they broke up." It was you could say it was a weird way of doing it. I just thought it was kind of a creative way and kind of a way to keep things mutual, to keep them friends, to get along. I thought that was probably actually the best way they could have done it in a scene like that. Um, yeah, I thought that was great. I love Nancy's character. I love that she's like Rambo, mowing down Demogorgons and such. I love that. That's an awesome role for her to play. The older folks were good as always. Hopper steals the show in every scene he's in. He just reminds me of Harrison Ford. David Harbour does as this character. Um, Murray was good as always. Add some comedy to the show here and there. As it plays a big role when it comes to helping the team, especially towards the end. And Joyce, as always, consistent, although less emotional moments this season than in past seasons, I noticed. Which you think she would have more because of how involved Will is, but nonetheless, I was happy with what she did. And yeah, I mean, overall, I was pretty happy with this finale. But the main thing I feel like people are waiting for us to talk about, Will, was the addition of Kali, which I feel like you had to do it. You had to bring her back somehow. I just think the way they treated her wasn't great. I mean, maybe she saved Eleven, and I think we'll talk about Eleven's death in more in depth later. Um, but if you look at it, she comes back, doesn't really do anything, then gets shot and dies. I don't know. Felt a little bit disrespectful to me. They could just maybe write her character a little better, do something. She wasn't bad by any means. She just didn't do anything. She just didn't do anything meaningful. So yeah, that kind of got to me. Um, a few more criticisms. I thought the finale, the fight with Vecna could have been longer. It was kind of the build up of these last two seasons, this fight with Vecna, and it was over pretty quick. They more centered it around the Mind Flayer, but that was really cool. I think the visual effects on the Mind Flayer looked great, despite the Dimension X that they were in, not looking great with the characters in front of it. I thought the blue screen was kind of noticeable, but maybe that was just me overanalyzing. But yeah, I thought the Mind Flayer looked good. Thought that fight was a little too short, but yeah, overall. I was happy with this season of Stranger Things. I'll probably give it an 8 out of 10, maybe a 7, 7.8. It's good. I really liked it. What about you, Will? How'd you feel about this season?
Yeah, so I would say initially, for me, I would say coming out of volume one, I was like, okay, this season is not as good as the other four seasons. Like the first four seasons, I think they're all A tier. I just really have no critiques really of the first four seasons. I think they're just that masterfully done. Through after volume one of Stranger Things season five, I was like, okay, this doesn't. I don't think this is as good as the previous four seasons. The pacing's faster. They're trying to give every character their moment. And I feel like that made it like through volume one more of a B tier season instead of an A tier season. But I must say that as the season got on and as we got into volume two and then the finale with volume three, I still wouldn't put this season quite on the level of the other four seasons. But the more and more the season went on, I was just like, you can't underestimate how well done this is, and you can't underestimate how good the show still managed to be, even in what I would consider its worst season or its worst season by their standards. So I would say even if I wouldn't put this season in the A tier, that I would like give the first four seasons, because like the first four seasons I would give them all grades of like A or an A plus because I think they're just that good. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't put season five quite on that level, but I would have to still put it in like the B plus A minus range because I think there were still just so many things that were working well even amidst the flaws, and there's so much that could be talked about with this season. I would say there were, some more, minor things going on, like the Nancy Jonathan scene. I thought their breakup scene was great. I felt like you could really sense that Natalia Dyer and Charlie Heaton are dating
Oh yeah, I forgot about
in
that.
in in real life. I feel like that really came through in that scene because their chemistry just I thought was just so fantastic that I felt like you could really tell that they were a real life couple in that scene. So I loved that scene. I did enjoy, some of the Dustin Steve scenes, especially the scene, where they both tell each other that they miss their best friend. I enjoyed some of that stuff. But I would say really the people for me who carried this season were Will and Max, and then I would say Will, Max, Vecna slash Henry and Robin were primarily
Yeah,
what
Robin was great.
drew me to this season, just going one by one there, Vecna, the fact that they were able to split time between having him as Henry and having him as Vecna, I just thought he really couldn't have been um, a better villain, and I feel like they left Vecna in a place at the end of season 4 to where there was more story to be told with him, and I felt his whole just villain arc this season and Jamie Campbell Bower's performance in that role, I just thought Vecna just solidified his status amongst the all-time great villains this season. Um, and then Robin, like, even though, like, I feel like Robin was kind of compelling through Will because she served as kind of Will's mentor figure this season, and this season was less about, her going on some personal journey of her own and more bestowing her wisdom in the things that she had learned upon Will. But I still really enjoyed Robin this season because I feel like it really made sense for her to be the mentor figure that she was to Will, and I feel like those two were a really compelling duo, and I feel like there was a lot to explore with those two characters and I feel like it really made sense to place them together this season. So I really enjoyed Robin, and I thought her and Will they were my favorite duo of this season. I thought those two characters were really well placed together. And then with Will, I talked about this in a previous episode, and I want to talk about it again. What impressed me so much with what they're able to do with that character this season is they had what could have been two entirely different storylines with Will. You've got this one storyline where he's coming to terms with his sexuality and Robin's helping him come to terms with that. And then you've got this whole other storyline where it's his connection to Vecna and the Upside Down and all that. Those two storylines could have been so separate from each other, and yet the show somehow found a way to merge those storylines together and kind of have them play off of each other and make it where really one story couldn't work without the other. And I feel like you can't underestimate what great writing that is on the Duffer Brothers' part to have storylines that could have been so different come together in such a great way. And then Max, what they have done with her character to me just proves why they're a great show.
Yeah,
Max in season 2, I didn't think she was a bad character in season 2. I just wasn't nearly as compelled by her as other characters because they didn't go into her that much. Then season 3, I feel like we start to learn a little bit more about her, and I start to, and you start to become a bit more compelled by her as an audience member. But then these last two seasons, I feel like she suddenly made the leap to top 3 character in the show. I mean, that's how
totally.
compelling I think that character is. And initially I was like, oh, maybe this will be a thing to where season 4 was Max's big season, and then she'll be in a coma for the majority of season 5, and then they'll bring
That's
her
what I
back
was thinking.
towards the end as an epic reveal. But instead, I was like, no, they had this as like a 2-season storyline for Max to where she was gonna like be front and center for 2 straight seasons. And I just feel like her storyline this season was a continuation of everything that they had done with her storyline in uh, season 4. So I would say Vecna, Robin, Will, and Max really carried this season for me throughout the majority of the episodes. But I also want to give them a lot of credit for how they handled 11 this season as well, because for the majority of the season I was like, okay, I feel like 11's storyline has kind of come full circle. I feel like a lot of the stuff with her and Matthew Modine's character last season, I feel like a lot of her storyline was wrapped up with that storyline last season. So I wasn't that riveted by 11 through the majority of season 5, but I feel like they did such a great job kind of not having her as much in the forefront throughout the first 7 episodes, but I feel like in episode 8 in the finale, they just found a way to kind of have everything come back to her. And I thought her scenes with Hopper were emotional and so well done. And I thought her scene with Mike was emotional and so well done. And I feel like they were able to do such a great thing with 11 to where I feel like she wasn't that compelling for the majority of the season, but I felt like in the final episode, they were just able to bring kind of everything back to her and end her storyline in a really compelling way where she has to make the ultimate sacrifice, which she does in epic fashion. And I think it was so great that they made the epilogue as long as it was, just to give us time to really say goodbye to these characters and for their story arcs to really have a proper farewell to them. So I love that they made the epilogue as long as it was. And look, are there, certain, things that I could nitpick, like them, not having Susie, Dustin's girlfriend from previous seasons in this season and not, and not really explaining that. There's little things, about the epilogue and about the season such as that I could nitpick. But on the whole, I feel like the show just continued to prove its greatness in this fifth and final season. Um, and and I feel like the reason that they did that is because if you can make what is by your standards the worst season of your show and be more B plus A minus instead of the A plus that I would give the first four seasons and still be as compelling as you were and still be as enjoyable as you were, I feel like that just shows why it's one of the best shows of all time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I see the other seasons here. I see five here. It's that close for
Yeah.
me. It's just maybe two's with it. I don't love two as much, but they're right there. You know what I mean? And a show of this proportion is so hard to just wrap up. You know, so I kind of want to dive into the epilogue now,
Yeah.
Will. More specifically, Eleven's death. Well, I'm gonna ask you right now. Well, first off, actually, I'm gonna say I love how they did that, how they sort of left it up for interpretation. I think that was a really cool way of doing it, leaving it ambiguous. I mean, more than likely she's probably alive, especially because they showed that scene. But I mean, it was really creative. But Will, do you think Eleven is alive?
I think it's great that they left it up to audience interpretation, and I feel like, I feel like if someone were to make the case that she was dead, that they would have a valid point. But I personally think she is alive because I think I heard this one theory to where to where when Dr. K and the military would like have those
Yeah, the
siren
kryptonite.
noises, yeah, at different point throughout the season, she would always be really affected whenever that would come in. But then, when that, happens at the end, she doesn't really seem affected by it at all. And I feel like that really plays into the story that Mike was telling to where, 8 was able to cast that spell and make it where it seemed like that was the real 11, but she actually had to escape. So I would say for that reason, I lean more toward her being alive. I also think she's alive just because, as a fan, if I'm given the choice between thinking that that character is alive or dead, I'm going to choose to believe that she's alive because I feel it would be very sad to believe that she had to, die and sacrifice herself after, after
Yeah.
how traumatic her life has been. I would much rather, as a fan, choose to believe that she's going to be able to um find a more peaceful life for herself moving forward. But I feel like they did such a great job, showing that sacrifices sometimes have to be made because even if you take the standpoint of 11 being alive, which is what I personally believe, even if you believe 11 is alive, that doesn't downgrade or diminish the impact of the sacrifice at all. Because even if you think 11 is still alive, like I do, it's still a heartbreaking sacrifice from the standpoint of her and Mike are never going to be able to see each other again. She's never going to interact with any of those characters ever again. So I personally believe she's alive, but I feel like they did such a great job making it where even if you do believe she's alive, her like the impact of her sacrifice is not downgraded one bit because even though she's going to go live a peaceful life for herself somewhere else, she's never going to be able to see any of her friends from Hawkins ever again.
Yeah, I mean, let's go through the evidence real quick. Well, I think we can do. So, let's see here. 11. The kryptonite is playing over the speakers, over the military speakers. Right? This is the evidence that suggests that she's alive, and it's probably the truest because there's the most of it. The alarms are blaring, you know. She stands there. She uses her powers, which to talk to Mike, which wouldn't happen if the kryptonite was blaring, to talk to Mike. And we also see her nose isn't bleeding after she talks to Mike. Which, when she uses her powers, her nose bleeds. And if it didn't bleed, that kind of suggests that she wasn't there. Um, but then on the other side, you have the idea that, and I don't know about you guys, I have the opinion that Kali was clearly dead when we last saw her. I mean, if she was even a little bit alive, I'm sure they would have taken her with them. So yeah, I'd say she was clearly dead, and that's really the only thing holding her back. And if she was alive, how would she know where 11 was? And I don't know if is that part of her power set. I don't know. Maybe it is. Um, but I don't know. I highly doubt it. I hope she's alive, like you said. Well, as a fan of the show, I think she deserves to be alive. I said that at the beginning of our Stranger Things conversations a few weeks ago. I was saying that she just doesn't deserve to die, and I don't think she should. But just because all she had to go through with this whole show is just because of her, you know. Um, but I like how they end that. I like how it ends with a D&D game, and Mike tells him that story. I like how we see glimpses into the future, even more into the future than we get in the time jump. We see Dustin hangs out with Steve from time to time, and everything goes good. Um, and then we see Mike talk about how he continues to be a storyteller, and you know what? Well, do you think Conformity Gate is real?
I mean, I feel like it's I mean, it was just confirmed that it wasn't real because I mean the date that people were theorizing for
I don't
it,
know.
for it being real. I mean, I guess people thought the episode was going to drop yesterday and then it didn't drop yesterday and on all
I
the
think the
Stranger
date,
Things.
if it is real, the date doesn't matter. I don't know. I think the date could be anything. Does I think it could still exist if we're gonna go down that road. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could technically say that, but all the Stranger Things social media accounts currently say all episodes of Stranger Things now streaming on Netflix. And the Duffer Brothers just don't strike me as the type of creators who would lie to their fan base in this way and have an ending, that was so satisfying and brought so much resolution to so many characters, only to just undo it and reveal that Vecna was still in control. I will say that some of the evidence that the fans came up with did give me cause to pause for a second. I'm
Yeah,
not saying there's
same.
not some validity to it, but I just think at the end of the day, I the Duffer Brothers don't strike me as the type of creators who would lie to their fan base like that, and I just think they gave so many characters such happy endings and so many of their story arcs feel complete that I don't I don't think it's real.
You know, as much as I'd like to believe it's real, just because I'd like to see more of these characters, it's not real, guys. Come on. Maybe this will. I hope this ages poorly, and I hope it comes out tomorrow. But guys, this is not a real thing. There's no way a show of this scale can have a hidden episode. I feel like that's just not possible. That's not feasible for them, you know? So, while it would be great to have that twist, No, everyone got such a satisfying ending. And like you said, well, a lot of evidence was there. Um, I mean, why did Lucas look at the camera when he said, "I don't believe in coincidences"? That was weird. He's never done that before, and he didn't do it. He didn't do it after. I don't know. Maybe one day we'll get a spin-off about Conformity Gate. But that leaves me wondering, well, what do you think this Stranger Things spin-off will be?
That's a great question, and I was really interested that the Duffer Brothers in multiple interviews said that the rock in the cave that Henry was in is going to connect to the spinoff in some way. So it's really interesting because the Duffer Brothers have made it clear, like, this is a show like in a new area with new characters that isn't going to have anything to do with the original Stranger Things series. But if that rock in that cave is gonna play a role in that series in some way, I'm thinking maybe it'll be a prequel potentially. What do you think,
Yeah.
Kim?
Oh, I think it could totally be a prequel, maybe Origins of Dimension X or whatever. I could totally see that happening. And, as much as I am interested in a spinoff, everyone, and I mean everyone, will just be comparing it to Stranger Things and really will. I think we both know it. There's just no way it can be as good, as unfortunate as that is. We'll all just be sitting here, you know, comparing the two, saying which one is better, when we all know Stranger Things is better. But obviously, I hope it's a great show. I like the Duffer Brothers a lot. I think this is going to go down in history. Stranger Things is. It's going to go down in history as one of the best shows of all time, and probably one of the biggest shows of all time as well, which is a remarkable achievement um, to do something with, at the time, one well-known actor and Winona Ryder, and a bunch of kids and a relatively small David Harbour at the time. It's crazy that that small scale, lower budget maybe show that it was in season one has turned into the Mind Flayer being a huge spider dragon. And I don't know, it could be, you could look at it as ridiculous, or you could look at it as just amazing to see how far the show progressed. And honestly, well, I was really happy with this show. I think it's good that this is the show that's going to go down in history. And not only is it a compelling show, but it's also a time capsule from the 80s to just show sort of what that time was like and some of the trends that went on during the time. And it kind of just served to remind people of the time it was. And on top of all that, we had some of the most compelling characters ever in television. So yeah, I'm extremely happy about Stranger Things, and I'm sure you are too, Will.
Definitely.
Yeah. But with that, that does it for this episode of the Everything Podcast. Thank you all so much for watching this episode. If you haven't watched Stranger Things season 5 or at all, you should probably watch it. I think it's one of the best shows in recent memory. I'll see you.